Value is what we're going to discuss today. Something that is extremely important, something that I think gets ignored. Human beings, we are selfish by nature. We tend to always focus on the things that we find important, the things that uh, we think that should happen to our lives. And a lot of times we overestimate the amount of care that we actually put into other people. Um, and that is something that is very dangerous long term in any sort of relationships because whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you know it or you don't, in every relationship, there is an emotional bank account. And that bank account each day is either filled by your actions or it is withdrawn by your actions. This is why the concept of value when you are entering into a relationship is extremely important. What value are you bringing into that relationship that is meaningful to the other person? We all know the golden rule: treat others as you like to be treated. And the way people a lot of times interpret that, because what we're selfish creatures, is treat a person the way you want other people to treat you. But I think it's a more complex and more detailed than that actually. I think what it actually means is treat the other person the way that they will want to be treated. Because when we say the way you want to be treated, the way you want, it means there's a very specific way in which you want to be treated, you as a person, that is going to be different from how other people find valuable, find important. That is completely different than another person that is completely different than you. The point is the way you would like. That is the part. So then you need to switch that to the other person, the way they would like. Treat the other person the way they would like to be treated. So it is extremely important to take time to study the other person who you've chosen. Now, the principles that I have, they sort of help with that process much quicker because we sort of focus on, let's just start with the baseline, the base principles that probably 99% of all men and women share, meaning like the things that men find valuable in women just in general, and then the things that uh, women find in men valuable just in general. Let's just understand that. Let's have a great baseline. Most people don't even have that. Most people just come into relationship into, all right, what kind of emotional stimuli am I going to get out of this, without even having the baseline. And we're going to go much more deeper into those conversations, especially whenever we start talking about the grand design and gender roles and so forth and so on. Because even though those things have been sort of like cast aside in our current society, we see that our relationship between one another, between people, between lovers is decreasing. People are not able to stay with their people as much as the older generations. There's a lot of propaganda that tells us, oh, they were not happy, right? As if like happiness is the measurement of your life. There's a lot of things that make you happy but are not good for you. Happiness is not a consistent state. It is something that happens and goes no matter the situation, right? This is where like you see a lot of like times like actors. I think this is just like, I saw this one video the Friends actor, the guy, the show Friends, and he was just talking about like, and Jim Carrey talks about this too. Like the idea of thinking that there's going to be some sort of an exterior thing that is going to happen to you. It can be money, it can be getting that car, get that house, and finally it's gonna get you to that place. It's gonna fill that hole within you that you think needs to be filled. But you don't realize that the things that are happening internal must be dealt with internally, not externally. And a lot of times people also use relationship as a crutch, as that object that will somehow fill the hole inside of themselves instead of understanding like, no, you should come in not wanting to extract from the relationship, but add it. You should come in with excess amount of good and value. And then that's what makes your relationship like actually become its own beautiful thing, that it exists no matter the external stimuli. Money is low, you have kids. We always heard about the thing about like a lot of times marriages end whenever children are born, because you reintroduce a new very big factor into your relationship, and because it's not principled, then there are certain rules that must be followed regardless of your situation. Because you don't have that, you then adapt to your new normal, but then that new normal takes you away and your focus away from actually making sure that you are continuously building the relationship that actually started that whole family to begin with. And it's even more important that that relationship is healthy for the sake of these brand new human beings you brought into life. They need a healthy environment. All that stems from value that you bring in, that is important to the person that you're with. And that's a really big mistake a lot of people make as well. You keep forcing what you believe to be valuable to other people. And then you expect them to have a reaction that you have if someone were to done that thing to you because you deem it valuable. And then when that person doesn't have the same reaction, you then get discouraged. And then you come up with all these things, oh, they're ungrateful, they're this. It's like, no, you've just not taken the time to really understand the person you're with and what they deem valuable. And then you actually treat them that way, in which they find the most valuable. It is as simple as that. And with the baseline, you've probably heard it already many times, right? Women want men who are strong. This is why, even if you look at data, like no matter the income level, uh, women tend to prefer men who are taller than them. Now, what does a man? Uh, what's a man to do in that situation? You can either bitch and complain about it or accept the harsh reality that intrinsically there are things that just foundationally women are looking for biologically, and it makes sense. I mean, like if you were to look at average female grip strength versus men, like men are like 3 times stronger than the average woman. Like if you were to take a woman at her peak in terms of like testosterone in her body, and which is the one responsible for muscle development and bone density and all of that, at their peak in their 20s and 30s, it is comparable to probably like a 6 to 10 year old boy, or like 70-year-old plus man who is untrained. He actually says that, and probably has like some sort of like health issues. So they're the weaker sex, they're the fair sex, and it makes sense for them to look for the things that they don't have: strength, protection, providing. And as men, we understand like, okay, that's the baseline. But then a lot of people, especially in modernity, they try to fight against that and say, oh, well, we are equal now, so women should just be okay with being with someone who they don't feel safe around. They will never be. And for you as a man, when you're looking for a woman, you're not looking for safety, right? You're looking for replication value. You're looking for beauty. You look at females and everything, literally everything they do. Like, I've always asked myself this, like, why are women clothes always showing the cleavage? It makes no sense. Why put on the makeup? Makeup, like, for example, like the red blush is to stimulate uh the face that usually happens, the flush when during intercourse. Long hair is a sign of fertility. White hips, it shows that, a woman's capacity to give birth. These things are intrinsic to us. You may call them whatever you want to call them. You may call them fashion. You may call them preferences, but they're universal. You go to Africa, same thing. You go to Asia, same thing. You go anywhere, same thing. And all that just says is just simply these are the values that these people who are opposite from one another deem important. And the other person, when you're looking at the opposite sex, what they see as important to you, right, is not important to them and vice versa. But you cannot just ignore that and be like, well, this relationship is going to be built based on what I find important. And the way I'm going to treat you is the way I want to be treated. Then you have misalignment. Then you're pouring all your energy and having very little what? Very little impact. So you're doing more work to try to fill up that emotional bank account with that person. But the deposits, even though the work is hard, you're working super, super hard, but the deposits are minuscule. But the moment you reverse that and you just take a time for a moment to understand what the other individual finds important from the basic level all the way to, the little different quirks that makes him or her different than other people, you start doing those things, the work becomes much smaller because in truth, like relationship is all about small little things. It's about the small little expression of love and actions. It's not the big things. So you do these little small things, but the deposit into the emotional bank account is much, much larger, right? I think there's even studies, another golden rule. They talk about like I think in psychology, psychiatrists they talk about this. Uh, the idea that like you for a healthy relationship, within five interactions, like five interactions between you and the person you're with, you need to have one negative interaction for every five. That is a healthy relationship. And anything above that, you're starting to go into territories that makes it uh, a negative thing, a bad relationship. And a lot of times, like people tend to see the negativity of the relationship when it's absolutely too late, right? Because you cover it up with a lot of things, with dates and probably watching movies together and sex, and that covers up a lot of like the underneath shallowness of that relationship because you just have a lot of things that you just kind of do together that kind of makes it feel like the relationship is healthy, but there's no real foundation there. It's not principled. There's no real blueprint there that both of you are following. This is why also things like gender role, and we're going to talk about this, are so important because a big part of maintaining a good emotional bank account is having very clear expectations of one another. Both of you know exactly what the other person is expecting, having a very clear understanding of what your job is, right? So you know when you're doing a good job and you know when you're not. That reduces a lot of disappointment in each other, right? A lot of misunderstandings where the other person feels like they're doing everything they need to do, feels like the relationship is good, but the other person is completely unsatisfied. Well, because there has not been a conversation to clear things out. There's no principle that is guiding both of you. First, to understand what is important to the other person in your day-to-day action towards the other person. For example, like my action towards my wife are completely different than her actions towards me. The things that she actually deemed really important to her, honestly, to me, are not that important at all. And vice versa, right? But that is where you understand, like, if you only rely on what you feel when I'm sitting there, for example, when I'm doing something with my wife, but I don't like this, the only uh, guiding thing for me in that moment is what I feel. But what you feel is just a temporary thing. It's not valid. Doesn't make it true. Doesn't make it productive. It's just what you feel. You can feel a lot of things all the time. I feel hungry. I feel full. Like those are feelings that just come and go. They don't have that power you think they do. They don't actually truly move the world and give you the outcomes you want. Actions does. And a lot of times you to really accomplish anything, you have to do the things you don't want to do, but then the outcome is way better than whatever temporarily emotional feeling you might have, good feeling or bad feeling you might have. Like for example, like working out. Right? Anybody who is in great shape will tell you, like, there's been many days that they never wanted to go work out. They felt terrible, but they still did it anyway. Right? And those actions became their habit, and then that habit became a part of their character. Now they love working out every single day. It's a part of who they are now. And then the outcomes that they get from working out, even though they felt bad, are much greater than the outcomes that have gotten if they just listen to their emotions at the moment and not when they work out. It's like at the end of the day, choose your pain. Choose your pain. It's either gonna be the pain that you pay up front for doing something that is hard and then you get something really amazing long term, or it's going to be the pain of not doing that thing up front because you want to feel good at the moment and then suffer for the rest of your life regretting your choices. Those are the only two options. The only really options you get is to choose what kind of pain you get. But regardless, you're going to feel pain.